Yeah, my glass is full right now because I have the 5 best teams in the NFL right now. Currently, I was struggling with the order that I want to put this team, all of these teams, but it's going to be similar to the list I put together last week. But just I'm putting accomplishments right now a little bit ahead of some of these teams, just because I've seen more in the past and have more reason to believe in them. And then my Sunday Night Football pick may have something to do with the order that these teams are in right now. So, for the top 5 teams, according to the Brickyard podcast, the first team I have has the most explosive wide receiver duo, the fastest wide receiver duo in NFL history. We have the Miami Dolphins. Why? They have the young head coach who is inspiring other head coaches in the NFL, where we have even a Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan are starting to talk about how they're taking some of Mike McDaniel's systems and implementing it on their own team. And then you have Tyreek Hill making an MVP push at this point. He wants to be the first wide receiver to become the MVP. He had a chance to hit that 2,000-yard mark last season, but he got banged up, had to sit out a few games. That's okay, but we have Jalen Waddle back. We have Jalen Ramsey coming back, which could definitely help elevate this team on this league. But what have they been? Had one tough loss versus Buffalo, but they dropped 70 points and had a chance for 80 if they actually left their starters in there. So they've been the most explosive offense this year. I just have to see more from them in big moments. And if they win on Sunday Night Football, they're definitely moving up on this list, but it's too much offense and not enough defense for this team. Their defense has been able to take advantage of definitely some underachieving offenses. So just kind of in a college football ranking based off of strength of schedule, I do have to just slide them in there at number 5 with room to move up in this. So Dolphins here at number 5. At number 4, the team that they're playing this week in the Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia Eagles still have a great defense. You have Jalen Carter coming in there, making plays. You still have Nakobe Dean, who's recovering from injury. They're trying to work him in, but you have Fletcher Cox manning the middle of that defensive line. You still have James Bradbury on that team at corner. You still have some talent in that secondary. You have Nick Sirianni, who is the dog. He has systems in place that are easy to understand, that are going to make it easier on our team and make it so our talent can take over. As Nick Sirianni said, he was able to grow those roots, and everyone's like, what's this guy talking about, growing our roots like a tree and ground up? Well, those roots are still pretty solid, still have one of the best offensive lines in football. That injury to Lane Johnson does concern me. I wish him all the best in his recovery. Hopefully he can bounce back and play on Sunday Night Football, but I still have them when it comes to offensive line. Quarterback, you still have Jalen Hurts there, and then their duo of AJ Brown and Devontae Smith is still one of the best duos in football right now. My only hesitation right now is with Jalen Hurts having 7 interceptions and leading the league at this point. He's right up there in interceptions, so a little bit of trepidation there, but I think they'll be able to bounce back this week and run the ball with D Swift versus the Miami Dolphins, and I expect them to get the win on Sunday Night Football. If not, they're going to be taking a step back, maybe off of this list, because we have some other teams that are starting to come into their own so far, like the Jaguars. And then I have Miami at 5, and then the Philadelphia Eagles at 4. And then we have at number 3, San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco 49ers started out as clearly the best team in football, dominating the Cowboys 42-10 on Sunday Night Football. Had a tough game versus the Cleveland Browns. However, you're coming off an emotional high versus the team in your conference that in week 3, people are like, actually, I think the Cowboys are the number 1 contender. No, they're not, because the San Francisco 49ers went in there, smacked them down, and then Micah Parsons like, how could you make this game personal, even though we played it in the playoffs and I should have made it personal? Well, the 49ers did. You still have George Kittle on this team, who's one of the best tight ends in football, the best tight end not named Travis Kelce. And then you still have Brandon Ayuk on this team. You still have Deebo Samuel. His x-rays came back negative. So you still have weapons everywhere. And then Fred Warner is a defensive player of the year candidate. Nick Bosa is one of the best pass rushers. Javon Hargrave on the defensive line. And then you have Kyle Shanahan and Steve Wilkes calling the plays for the defense. So I still think this is one of the top 3 teams in football right now. I don't expect them to take a massive step back. That Browns game was definitely a tough situation where best team in football off a high. It's just a tough game to win, especially when you had 3 key injuries to your team during that game. So not losing too much faith in the 49ers, because I still think they easily have the best roster in football. And then at number 2. Gotta go with the Kansas City Chiefs. Why? They won the Super Bowl last year, and they have the biggest margin to start the season of victory so far. Biggest point differential. Patrick Mahomes has his best record to start a season so far, and went out there versus Denver. They were toying with them. Don't put too much stake in a 19-8. They kind of look bored in that game. Do we really need to open up the playbook against the Denver Broncos? No, we don't. We heard the same criticism all last season where like, oh, I don't know about the receivers. And it's like, no, it's Patrick Mahomes. And when Patrick Mahomes wants to go out there and get it done, he's going to do it in the playoffs. And I have faith in him, Travis Kelce. And then you have Pacheco, Rashid Rice on that team is really starting to come into his own, better than Sky Moore, who needs to step up on that team. And then, but this defense is the best defense that the Kansas City Chiefs have had. You still have Steve Spagnuolo, who, if defensive coordinators could win coach of the year, he's as good of a coach on defense as Andy Reid is a coach of offense. And then Matt Nagy still figuring out the playbook, but Andy Reid can take away the play calling in the playoffs and really open it up. And then Patrick Mahomes beat Philadelphia in the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes beat the San Francisco 49ers in the Super Bowl. And he's just, I don't know, the best player in football. So I have to put him at number 2. The reason why you're not number 1 is because you lost at home after winning the Super Bowl, and you lost to the Detroit Lions. You didn't have Chris Jones, you didn't have Travis Kelce, but at number 1, we have to have those Lions because they are 5-1. They keep getting better every single week, where maybe you're worried about the San Francisco 49ers coming out and blowing teams out. Well, that defense was the question mark. I had them going 15-2 coming into the season. That's definitely still very possible because the only tough games they have left are versus the Baltimore Ravens and the Chargers, if you can even call that a tough game with the product they're putting out on the field recently. And then you have Jared Goff, who's coming into his own. We can't run the football. Doesn't matter. David Montgomery's hurt. Jahmyr Gibbs is out now. Jared Goff, I'll take it. I'm going to throw for 350, 2 touchdowns, and drop dimes. Amon-Ra St. Brown. People are like, oh, he's just a possession guy. Wrong. Jamison Williams coming back after that suspension for gambling. Just leave the parking lot. It's fine. Just leave the parking lot to place your bet. It's not that urgent. Well, made a mistake, but he's back now, and it's good for the Lions because they needed that dynamic outside threat as a weapon for wide receiver. Well, he's making adjustments mid-air and catching the ball. He's not just a speed guy. He has great hands. He has great football IQ. And then him and Jared Goff still need to build some chemistry, but he's going to open up the field even more, where you're not going to be able to just stack the box versus the Lions. And then also Lions, 2 good tight ends, 2 very good wide receivers. And then you have someone like Craig Reynolds at wide receiver, who's a great possession guy. Jared Goff leans on him in big moments when he needs a guy to go out there and get a catch. Sam Laporta, he's been one of the best tight ends in football, not named Cole Kmet, not named Travis Kelce, not named George Kittle. And then you have Brock Wright, who's been a very good blocker, and then he can get you a third down when you need it. And then you have David Montgomery, who's sidelined right now, but he's been a top 10 running back in football. Who saw that coming? And then you have the defense. Aaron Glenn is doing his thing with Aiden Hutchinson. Pick up Jack Campbell, who's been a starter. Malcolm Rodrigo has been a monster when it comes to stopping the run. When they get a turnover, Rodrigo's out there throwing down blocks for his guys. And then you have C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who's been hurt, but he led the league in interceptions last year. And when he comes back, just the communication on that defense, the intensity with this team, everything feels different. And they're going to get the number 1 seed in the NFC. Their schedule leads you to believe that, especially when the Cowboys, the Eagles, the 49ers all have tough games within their division. Tell me a tough divisional game for the Lions. I'll wait, because their toughest game was the one in Green Bay. What did they do? They laid the smack down and they told the Packers, this is our division now. You're not going to own us anymore. Dan Campbell's like, hey man, let's get it done this year. And he's out there. You can see his intensity's changed, where last year he kind of had the look where he's in the sunken place, and then his demeanor is just, let's go kill him. Let's get ready to run through a wall. And then all the players on the Lions are like, yeah, let's go out there. Let's get into it. Jared Goff is making his push for the MVP. It's him and Tyreek Hill right now, especially with the Lions being 5-1. Not impressed with any of the other candidates or elite quarterbacks outside of maybe a defender at this point. So I think Jared Goff is putting himself in a position to be the MVP. Aiden Hutchinson is someone who could enter into that defensive player of the year conversation. And then they've been able to win in so many different ways. Their defense can win them a game, their run game can win them a game, and their passing game and Jared Goff can win a game. They said Jared Goff is a better quarterback than when we found him and when he got here from LA. And this team is one of the few teams that Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell, Jared Goff, and the owner are all on the same page. They have the culture, they have the intensity, and they have the reason where the 49ers, okay, you come out hot, you're getting injured. And then the Eagles, they seem beatable. And the Lions played 2 really tough games versus them last year. And this is a team, to preface, started 1-7 last year. And then it wasn't until week 6 this week that people start to say that the Lions were contenders. I've been saying this all offseason. It is obvious if you look at their draft. It is obvious if you look at what they've done the past few years. It is obvious if you watch Hard Knocks how different this team is, and they have the mojo. They have the firepower to go out there, get it done. Lions Nation, let's roar.
And that, like we mentioned, the most accurate, the most reliable sources of top 5 and bottom 5 teams in the NFL here on the Brickyard podcast with an absolutely